I'm Erin Perkins, and this is my case study for EDL 850, Internet Violations and Threats, the case of an inappropriate web page that seems to have been created by students, slandering a high school teacher of high academic rigor. What do I know so far? So, based on the case study given to us, this is taking place in an affluent area, which generally means some sort of parental pressure, both on your kids to perform well, as well as on school employees to enable their students to perform well. Currently, students are struggling in this class who don't normally struggle, and when a new situation like this new high academic rigor is presented into an environment, there's always going to be some resistance and pushback, especially when you've got kids who are on that valedictorian, salutatorian track who are having some difficulties. And someone is using the internet to express opinions. Presumably this someone is a student, given the forum that's being used, Facebook, and the exaggerated response of who wants to see Miss Tate disappear, which is not a rational response for parents, hopefully. What do I need to know? I need to know the results of the principal's interview with students, which is going to be discussed as one of the tactics that he should take, and I think how it could be gone about. Miss Tate points out a student who she suspects could be the one who has done this. Does this student, named William, have poor grades in her class? A history of more rash decisions and actions? What's the reasoning for her singling him out, with him potentially being the culprit, other than he always talks behind the back? Tech's role in this, will they be able to find anything? And also parental optics, how will they perceive this investigation? Especially with the high rigor and demands of the teacher, do they care for her as a teacher? Will this cause loss of parental support in the school? I'd like to know more about their involvement in the school and their feelings on the teacher before making such a grand-scale investigation, or, that would influence some decisions that are being made. So the problem I see currently is that, is there a valid threat? How should you proceed as a principal when you find these things out? The intensity of Miss Tate's teaching style has not been resolved in a way where students and Miss Tate know how to respond to each other. Thus, an inappropriate Facebook page has been created, which may or may not directly physically threaten Miss Tate, but it does pose slander and overall inappropriate internet use. My plan of action would be this: to assist Miss Tate, to interview and fact-find quickly, and take appropriate disciplinary actions. Ms. Tate needs a more solid plan of action to help maintain her rigor and encourage her students to live up to the expectations, as opposed to fold under the pressure and resort into needing to take out their frustration online. I know that it's been mentioned that some steps have been taken to help her already. I think a more solid plan needs to be put in place. Should there be a finding from Tech and from the interviews that the principal already intends to do, he should then follow through with appropriate discipline according to school board policy of internet use violation and slander. The strategies that I would use to implement this plan then would first start off with a mentorship for Ms. Tate. Have a mentor sit in and work with her for more appropriate classroom strategies to maintain the rigor but potentially ease some of the stress. Using a mentoring teacher sends a supportive message, especially to the class who might have more rude things to say if the principal was in there to, oh, you can't control things, that sort of high school talk. The principal will probably get more out of his interviews then if he takes a problem-solving approach. This should be used with parents as well, as it's best to have their support, especially if a student is found guilty in starting this inappropriate webpage. And then whether or not disciplinary actions are going to need to take place, the entire school would benefit from an infusion of digital citizenship curriculum to help promote positive online behaviors. To promote the academic success and personal well-being for every student, the resolution should include these better teaching practices for Ms. Tate, a digital citizenship curriculum, for the students at the school to be able to use their online resources wisely, and behave as a good digital citizen online wisely. And then a partnership for a positive school atmosphere with the teacher, with the students, and with parents and other teachers as well. As I read through this case, the things that really stuck out to me of wanting to maintain your academic rigor along with parental support and promote better problem-solving and appropriate life skills. There's no reason to let up on the intensity of Ms. Tate's class. Academic rigor and push is a good thing, especially for kids who are seeking higher education. And that's what she's trying to teach. It's the specialty classes that require more challenging thought. which is exactly what she's teaching. Keeping the support of parents is key because realistically in this type of neighborhood it would be easy for them to use their affluences to find a replacement principal. It's also just best practice, especially when acting in loco parentis, to get them involved and get their thoughts and feelings as well. Students need to know that there are other ways to take out their frustrations, share their concerns, and speak their minds without being slanderous and or threatening. You can be frustrated, you can have difficulties in what's going on in school in your class, but to say something and post something somewhere, and then to be a person who's going to leak that information to the person who this is being held against, aren't the most appropriate life skills and could be things that could get you fired from a job. The unresolved issues I've seen are: 1, Miss Tate's classroom. How has she handled more upfront help in her classroom? Has she made any changes? 2, if it was found that these posts were made potentially even during school hours or on personal devices, will a policy need to be adopted regarding such things, or potentially putting a filter on what websites can be accessed? Those sorts of things, so reviewing personal device policy perhaps. And then the student-teacher relationship repair. Has a mediation conversation been held with Ms. Tate and the offending student and his or her parents, along with another teacher or counselor present? So that student's not, you're setting things up for failure if you don't have some sort of conversation with allowing the student back into class, knowing that these things have occurred, for the sake of the teacher, for the sake of the student, clear the air, figure out a plan how to move forward. I believe that my plan acts with the integrity of academic success for every student in the following ways. Maintaining academic rigor is in their best interest. With her sticking around and trying to give her different classroom management tools, academic rigor is being preserved and valued, which is in the student's best interest, especially if they are going to follow in their parents' footsteps into high-profile or paying jobs. Keep that rigor going, knowing how to cope with potentially stressful situations in a positive manner. Swift action, so taking care of these interviews and disciplinary actions quickly, ensures that this doesn't linger around and get in the way of academic progress. It's not something that everyone's got to talk about for days on end. And then the digital citizenship curriculum further educates students to be successful after high school, as these skills are ones they're going to use for life and need to be effective with to keep themselves out of trouble in a job scenario. I believe my plan 2 also acts with fairness for the well-being of every student in the following ways. If you're interviewing multiple students, you're making sure you're not singling out just the one that Ms. Tate suspected. It's not pointing fingers without all the facts. It allows for others to air their grievances as well, should there be any. And just to really be able to have enough support to say, should you find the culprit, and if it is the one that Ms. Tate pulled out and singled out, these are all the things that I've heard. Following board guidelines and fair disciplinary procedures and actions that follow these board guidelines in the appropriate manner hold students accountable for their actions, something that they will need to be able to do when they graduate high school. Own up to their mistakes and their consequences. I also believe that my plan acts ethically to the principles and professional norms by taking Ms. Tate, the students, and the parents' interests all into consideration here. Supporting staff is critical to keeping good staff and being supportive of your employees, making their concerns feel legitimate and taking appropriate action, not just writing it off as some silly prank that's not worth looking into. By working more with Ms. Tate, you take the students' education into concern as well, trying to make their learning environment a place where they can thrive. Even though it is difficult to understand that and emphasize that difficulties in academics occur, and that's okay, and the struggle is there, and that's okay too. There's the appropriate times and place for it, and how do you work through it. And ultimately, that's what parents want. They want good staff who are going to give their kids a quality education. Finding all the facts before pointing fingers and taking action, then keeping parental support by involving them in the process is key to maintaining their support in the future, which in this affluent community you definitely want to continue to do. So that's how I would handle this situation of the inappropriate post that was made being slanderous toward a teacher and employee at my school.